In today's episode, How to Get Into Real Estate, we'll be talking about special provisions and more specifically, special provisions you might use when you're selling a property. So stick around. We're going to get to that. And if you stay till the end, I'm actually going to give you a set of my special provisions that I have used and collected over the years. So at the end of this segment, I'll give you a link and you can download my special provisions and you can see all the different ones I've used over the years. When you're negotiating with a buyer and you're trying to sell a property, there are certain things that you might hear in that conversation that you want to make a run at that'll make your property more lucrative or increase your profit. A good place to do this is in the special provisions. You can always put in the special provisions, I'm keeping the sofa, I'm keeping the washer and dryer, I'm keeping the refrigerator, and you can just make a run at all these appliances and see if the guy just agrees. If they don't like it, you can always just cross it out. But the special provisions is a great place to try to up your game. In this segment, we'll not only learn about the definition of special provisions, but we'll also be talking about when to use them and how to use them correctly. We're also going to talk about some examples I have used when selling properties. Then at the very end, I'm going to tell you this little secret. It's very simple and it's very easy, but there's a little secret how I never miss the right special provision for the right occasion. And it's a very simple thing you can do and you won't ever miss when you're supposed to put a special provision in. There's simply too many to remember. So I'm going to show you my little secret and you'll never miss it again. So let's define the words special provisions, okay? So I'm going to get a little help here. I'm going to read from my paperwork here. Special provisions are for any arrangements between the buyer and the seller that are not covered in the state promulgated forms. It may be best to use the addendum available to realtors for routine arrangements, okay? Now, I always use the addendums whenever I'm doing something like the seller wants to stay in the house or whatever. They got all these routine addendums. But when there's things that are not routine, that's really what I'm talking about here. These special provisions that I've learned that can be real money makers, or CYA provisions, which is cover your you know what, right? As always, you have to put everything in writing. So if you do a contract and then later on you decide to add something to that contract or address something that wasn't addressed in the contract or change something about that contract, you have got to do all this in writing. This is where a lot of deals go bad and a lot of good deals turn into crappy deals because we get in a conflict over something that was not in writing. So using special provisions or modifying special provisions by saying we're going to add an addendum to this contract now because we're making changes or we're making additions. So if you have a contract and there's going to be an addition or some kind of change to it, you may want to add an addendum. And this is how I use special provisions with an addendum. I will simply go to the special provisions section and say, see addendum A attached hereto and made a part hereof. And then I'll fill out addendum A, which will address the addition or the changes that we're making. And we'll just date it and we'll both sign it and we'll staple it to the contract. And so now we have a real live change that's been documented and signed by both parties. This is a really good CYA. You know, you got to cover your backside and never do anything on a handshake or verbally. Everything in writing. So I was talking about using special provisions to make some extra money when I'm selling a house. So here's some special provisions that I've used just to make a run at. Buyer to pay all closing costs. I put this in the special provisions. Make them initial it. Normally, the seller has to pay a certain amount, but I'll make a run at it, see if anybody wants to correct it or they want to let it go. There are no tax or homeowners association prorations. That means if they've paid for the year, then they just stay paid for. You know, I'll put that in the special provisions. There's a lot of special provisions you can use to up your game. I venture to say I could up your game about $1,000 a deal, at least minimum, on some piddly stuff in here. So if you hang around to the end here, we're going to give you a copy of this, but it's about 24 special provisions that I've used in the past. Now, before I tell you about my little secret of how I don't miss the right special provision for each and every house that I write up, I want to get you to take a look at that like button and that share button. And if you find these episodes to be helpful or motivational or inspirational, please hit that like button, hit the share button, let your friends and neighbors know. And of course, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. We have a lot of content coming over the years and a lot of free stuff. I always look for something to give away free that'll be helpful to you. I work at it very hard, and there should be mountains of stuff by the time this year is over. So be sure to hit the subscribe button. All right, now that little secret, how you won't miss the right special provision for the house you're looking at or dealing with today. You take your special provisions and you put a copy, all the special provisions, right on top of your blank contracts. So when you're selling a house, and I know if you're a professional real estate investor, you have a whole bunch of blank contracts. Well, just add this to your blank contracts. Put it right on top. When you go to sell a house, you'll be looking at the house that you're dealing with. And then you can start reading down through your own set of special provisions, and the ones that you think you need for this buyer that you're talking to will start jumping off the page at you. And it will up your game. I bet you it'll up your game about $1,000 a house. If you take some of these special provisions and start sliding them into your contracts, the ones that fly will make you money. The ones that don't fly, well, you just cross them out and initial them and you move on, just like, but at least you had the chance. To get your free copy of my special provisions to put on the top of your contracts when you're selling, just go to 1000houses.com/selling provisions. That's /selling provisions with an S, and you will get a download of my special provisions. I want to thank you so much. If you didn't see the one on the special provisions with buying, go back an episode, because I did do a set of special provisions when you're buying. These special provisions are for when you're selling. So be sure you get both episodes. See you again down the road. Hasta luego.